Hi, I'm Rebecca from engVid. In this lesson, you will learn the exact meanings of 12 advanced adjectives in English. Now, even though there are 12, these are actually 6 pairs of adjectives, and they're often confused because they either sound the same or they look the same. And so they can be confusing for those reasons, okay? Now, here we're just going to look at these 12, even though these are important and these are advanced and a wonderful way to upgrade your vocabulary. But if you're really interested in correcting these kind of errors in vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, or anything else, then please do check out my course, Correct Your English Errors in 10 Minutes a Day. I will leave a link to that in the lesson description. And there we actually correct more than 120 different errors step by step in grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and all kinds of areas. Okay? So check that after the lesson. Okay? So now let's get started with today's lesson. So what we'll be doing is we will be focusing on 3 different areas. First of all, yes, like I said, the meaning. Which word should we be using for that particular sentence? Second, we'll be looking at different ways in which we can use each of these words. So that's called collocations. So make sure that you stay after this board for our second board, where you'll learn exactly how to use these in many different situations, okay? So you'll really master this vocabulary. You won't just tell the difference, you'll know how to use it in many different situations and with different expressions, all right? And along the way, we'll also check the pronunciation, okay? All right, so let's get started. Number 1. Many people are concerned about the economic situation or about the economical situation. All right? So what is the correct word here? Now, you could do this in a few ways. If you like, I'm standing to the side and you could pause the video and you could go through them all, mark down which one you think is the correct answer, and then join me after that. Or you can stay with me and we'll do it together. All right? So let's go through the first one again. Many people are concerned about the economic or economical situation. Which is the correct word to use in that context? Economic or economical? Okay, so the correct one is economic, all right? The economic situation. So economic has to do with the economy, with money, business, trade. I'm going to explain each of the correct answers and the other ones also. The others are also correct words, they just have a different meaning. I'm going to explain each of them in detail so you understand exactly. But first, let's understand in general, okay? So when we say the economic situation, economic relates to the economy. And economical relates to something else, which we will look at, which has to do with how you save money. All right? Next, let's go to number 2. Be careful. The storm is imminent or eminent. What's the right word there? Which one do we want? The storm is imminent or the storm is eminent? So here, this is wrong and this is correct, okay? So what does that mean? In case, perhaps you know these words, okay? Perhaps you've heard them before and you might get confused, or perhaps you've never heard of some of these, and that's okay too. It's an opportunity to learn them. So when we say that something is imminent, it means it's about to happen, okay? It's usually talking about something a little bit negative or a little bit dangerous, all right? So it's the storm, okay? The storm, the hurricane, the tornado is imminent. It's about to happen. So be careful, all right? That's the correct word here. Eminent has a completely different meaning. It means famous, well-known. And we'll look at all of that soon. Number 3. Could you please connect me to the personal department or to the personnel department? So what's the correct word there? The personal department or the personnel department? Okay. So here, this is kind of in a business context, right? Perhaps somebody's looking for a job and they want to speak to which department? Do you know? All right. So the correct answer is personnel. Okay. The personnel department. So personnel has to do with staff, with HR, human resources, manpower, workforce. Okay. That's the word you're looking for. And see the pronunciation? Personnel. All right, we'll go over the pronunciation as well later. This personal means something private, something individual. Has a completely different meaning, okay? And again, when we see the expressions with which we can use each of these words, you'll understand exactly how to use each one, and you'll be able to use them. First of all, use them in case you're not using them already. And second, use them correctly in the right context. Okay? Number 4. Are you ready? The rain was continuous with no break for 6 hours. Or the rain was continual with no break for 6 hours. This is a really advanced word, okay? There might be some English speakers who also make mistakes with that particular one. So do you know what's the difference? They sound almost the same, they look almost the same, but there is a very important difference. So the correct answer is, have you chosen? Okay, the correct answer is continuous. Okay, so continuous means that something kept happening, something continued with no break. Okay, without stopping. And continual means that something kept happening, something continued, but there were breaks in the middle. All right, we'll look at more examples of that on the next board. Okay, number 5. That peace deal changed everything. It was historic or it was historical. Which is the right answer here? So, the correct answer is historic. Okay? In this context, we want to say, because look what it said here. That peace deal changed everything. It was historic. So historic is used to talk about something that happened either in the past, it could also be in the present, or maybe even in the future, okay? But it's something important in history. Something important. Like here, we said it changed everything, so it was obviously a very important peace deal. And historical also has to do with history, but it just means that it was something that happened in history, in the past. Okay, it was historical. But this is something important that happened in history. All right? And again, we'll look at more examples so you understand very clearly the difference and you don't make this mistake. Okay? Next, number 6. Someone says, don't be childish or don't be childlike. What's the difference? In this case, it's really important because these are actually opposites, okay? This is something positive. Oh, sorry, the other way around. Don't be childish. This is negative, and this is something positive. So the answer here, don't be childish, okay? So childish is like a child, but in a negative way, okay? As we know, we all love children. Sometimes they can be, they can have some negative qualities, right? They can be stubborn and they say they want what they want, and that's being childish, okay? And it's the negative side of kind of being a child, what goes with being a child. And childlike is actually the positive, wonderful, lovely qualities of being a child, like being innocent and trusting and so on. All right? So here, this person is saying, Don't be childish. Okay? So here, that was the correct answer. So first, just repeat after me. Ready? Let's repeat the words first. Economic, economical. Good. Imminent, eminent. Okay, don't worry, we're going to review the vocabulary and the meanings too, but let's just get used to the pronunciation. Personal, personnel. Good. Continuous, continual. Good. Say it aloud if you're alone somewhere, if you're in a place where you can speak aloud. Always say it aloud, not just in your mind, especially for pronunciation. Historic, historical. Good. And childish, childlike. Okay? So, perhaps you've understood them well, but let's make sure you understand them very well and see the collocations and expressions in which we can use these advanced adjectives. Now, let's look at how we can use these words in expressions or collocations. All right? Let's get started. The first one, economic. So first of all, what does economic refer to? It refers to money or trade or industry. All right, we're talking about the economy. So here we could say economic problems, economic issues, the economic situation. There's an economic crisis. You might also hear people referring to an economic slowdown. That's when the economy slows down, okay? Or an economic collapse, when it totally falls. Okay, when something collapses, it falls. It's usually, in this case, a very negative thing to happen. Okay, you want the economy to be strong. You don't want it to fall or collapse. Okay, so we could use it in that expression. They also talk about economic growth. Growth is the noun for to grow. Or economic development, which is the noun of develop. All right? So these are some ways in which you can use that term. Now let's look at the other one, economical. So economical means that it's cheaper to buy that one. It has you get better value for your money. You can save money, time, resources. When you can do that, we use the word economical. All right? So for example, you could have it's an economical option, okay? It's a more economical option to buy, for example, the larger size cereal than the smaller box of cereal, okay? Because usually it's a little bit cheaper overall, right? Or it might be a more economical option to buy a used book rather than a new book sometimes, all right? So that's the idea of economical. You could also find that it's an economical solution to buy a certain kind of car where you get better gas mileage. Or it might be an economical solution for some people to buy a house outside the city where it's a little bit cheaper and you get better value for your money than to buy a house in the city. All right? So that's the difference between economic, to do with the industry, and money and the economy, and economical, which means you get a better deal for something, for your money. All right? Now, the next two, imminent and eminent. So we said that imminent means that something is going to happen very soon. And usually it's something quite negative, all right, or dangerous even. So we talk about things like an imminent hurricane or imminent danger. Somebody's in imminent danger. You need to get out of there. The house might collapse. Something like that, okay? Or an imminent attack. People are going to attack. So again, be careful. The attack is imminent, or an imminent attack, or an imminent disaster when there are lots and lots of things that have gone wrong. For example, after a very bad hurricane, certain areas that are very badly destroyed could be referred to as a disaster. Okay? So imminent means that it's about to happen very soon. The next one, eminent, completely different, no connection at all. It means that it's used to refer to usually people who are famous, admired, respected very, very much. So really, you could use it for any kind of professional or person. For example, an eminent scientist, or an eminent historian, an eminent artist, or writer, or poet. Okay? Anybody, really, in any kind of profession who is well known and well respected and admired is called eminent. All right? Good. Let's go to the next two. Personal and personnel. So personal has to do with me. It's private. It's to do with the individual. Okay? Anything that has to do with one individual, that person privately is personal. And the other one is personnel. We'll get to that. So we could refer to, that's my personal information, or my personal data, or data, okay? Or that's my personal opinion. It's what I think. Or that's his personal opinion. It doesn't have to be only about me. It just has to be about one person. So that's his personal opinion. That's her personal view. Her opinion, again, on a situation or something like that. Or he's moving to another city for personal reasons, okay? For his own reasons. Or she collected her personal belongings. They often use this term, personal belongings. Sometimes they make this announcement on a plane before you get off. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you take all your personal belongings with you before you get off the plane. So belongings is just a fancy word that means all your things, okay? That's all. Everything, all the things that belong to you. All right? Those are your belongings. So that was personal. Next, we come to personnel. So personnel refers to the people who work in a company or an organization or an association or anything like that, okay? So we sometimes call it the personnel department. Very often that personnel department is actually referred to as HR, human resources, right? And its personnel has to do with the staff, the workforce, the employees who are there, the workers who are there, okay? And you could say the personnel department. You could say use this to refer to the personnel director or the personnel manager, right? Could I please speak to the personnel director, the person in charge of staff, in charge of hiring, training, things like that. That's the personnel department. Okay, so these are our first 6 adjectives. All right, so now we have continuous and continual. So continuous, as we mentioned earlier, is when something keeps happening or repeats, but there are no breaks. It's continuous, okay? This one is continual. So it keeps happening, but there are breaks, all right? So if I were to draw it for you, I would say continuous is like this, and the continual one will be like this, okay? So it keeps happening, but here with breaks and here without any breaks. So we could refer, for example, to continuous work, all right? Somebody worked continuously for 6 hours with no break, or 8 hours, all right? Or there was continuous noise. That means the noise kept happening, all right? There was no stopping in the middle. Or You could also have continual work, which is with breaks, okay, or continual noise, where there was a lot of noise, but there were some breaks in between. For example, if somebody was building a bookshelf upstairs, your neighbor, so maybe they're not going to keep hammering every minute, but from time to time it would happen. Okay, that is continual. Or continual complaints, okay, from customers. They don't happen all the time, but they happen every now and then, okay? Or continual traffic. If you look outside, you see continual traffic. There is traffic, then it stops, then there's traffic again. Okay, that is continual. In fact, a nice way to remember the difference between these two words is to think of, for continuous, think of like the flow of a river, okay? The flow of a river. A river keeps flowing, right? It doesn't usually stop. However, traffic, the flow of traffic is continual. The traffic comes up to a point, it stops, it continues again. Traffic simply means all the cars and trucks on the road, okay? So the flow of a river is continuous. The flow of traffic is continual. All right, good. Now let's look at these important words, historic and historical. Okay, a lot of people confuse these. So let's understand again. Historic is talking about something important in history, and historical is just talking about something that happened in history. Not necessarily important at all, it's just part of the past. This can actually be part of the past or the present or even the future, okay? It's going to be historic, we could say. It's going to be important, or it is important. It's historic now, or it was historic. So we could talk about a historic day when something happened, a historic occasion or event when something happened, a historic agreement, or a historic opportunity or chance to do something. All right? And on this side, you can, since we're just talking about something that's connected with the past, but not necessarily important, it's historical data, historical documents, historical novels. Many people like to write or read historical novels that are based on something, a time in the past, okay? Or you could look at historical photos, okay? Maybe they're photos from the past. They're not necessarily specifically important or significant, but they're from the past, so they're historical. Or when we talk about stock prices, the prices of stocks that might go up or down, we talk about the historical stock prices, what happened in the past to a particular stock or share in a company. Or even exchange rates, right? The value of the dollar. What is the historical data behind the exchange rates? All right? So that's how you might see historical being used, or how you can use it. The last two, childish and childlike. All right, so again, we said childish refers to the negative qualities that a child may have, and childlike refers to the positive qualities that a person could have. Now, often when we use childlike, we are actually talking about people who are not children. We're talking about older people, okay? Adults, teenagers, not really children. But we're saying that these people who are no longer children have a positive quality of a child, for example, or these people who are grown up have some negative qualities of a child. So we could talk about childish behavior, childish actions, or having a childish attitude towards something. Childish, again, the negative qualities might be being immature, being selfish, wanting something immediately, having no patience, things like that. Okay? And childlike refers to the positive qualities that a child has, and therefore that adults can have. A kind of curiosity, wanting to know about why is this like this and why is this like that. Okay, children have that quality, and some adults continue to have those qualities as they grow up. Or a childlike love for something. I remember that my grandmother used to love ice cream, okay? So she had a childlike love for ice cream, and anytime there was any ice cream, she wanted it, okay? Or a childlike joy or delight in something. Or you could also have a childlike trust or faith in people, in certain situations, and so on, okay? So those are the last 6 that we have. So the ways that you can use them is to think of some examples of your own, write some sentences of your own, think of your own life or people that you know. Are there people you know who are childish or childlike? Think of a historic occasion that you know about. Think about something that's continuous or continual, or some of the other words we looked at. Economical, extremely important, especially in the professional world, and especially if you're an economist, but even if you're just talking about what's going on in the world, right? You really want to know the difference between these commonly confused adjectives, all right? But take them into your vocabulary, include them, because they are higher level, advanced vocabulary words. So it's good to know them and to be able to use them in your speaking and in your writing. And as I said, these are just 12 that we did today, but if you want to correct your English further, please do check the link to my course, all right? The Correct Your English Errors in 10 Minutes a Day. And there we'll tackle grammar problems, we'll correct vocabulary issues, collocations, pronunciation, lots of different areas, okay? So check that in the link if you're interested, all right? Thanks very much for watching, and all the best with your English. Bye for now.